Masechet Shevuot, Daf Lamed, we begin the fourth perek. Mishnah, Shevuot ha'edut noheget ba'anashim velo benashim, berchokin velo bikrovin, bechsherin velo bifsulin, ve'ena noheget ela beru'yin leha'id. Shevuot ha'edut, that's an oath that someone says, I do not know anything about this case, I have no testimony. If they are lying, and in fact they do have testimony, it's a mitzvah, they have to testify about it. And so if they lie and say they didn't know anything about it, and then it turns out that they did, then that Shevuah is a false oath, and we'll see the consequences in a second. This type of oath applies applies to men, but not to women. That's because men can be witnesses, women cannot officially be witnesses. Now, it's true, there are certain cases where women can testify, for example, to say that I saw this person died, and therefore this man, that the deceased's wife is allowed to remarry. So there are certain cases where women can testify, but generally they are not able to officially as two witnesses regarding criminal cases and financial cases. And so therefore the oath, this Shevuot ha'edut, if someone swears falsely, the punishment will only apply to men but not to women. Berchokin velo bikrovin, and it applies to people who are not related and not to people who are related, because someone who's related cannot be a valid witness, and it applies only to kosher witnesses and not to someone who's like a gambler who cannot be a witness. So those people, since they cannot testify anyway, so there would be no reason for them to make an oath that they don't know anything about it, and this punishment of saying a false oath would not apply to them, and it only applies to those who are fit to testify. Bifnei betin שלא בפני בית דין מפי עצמו, ומפי אחרים אין חייבים עד שיכפרו בהן בבית דין דברי רבי מאיר. This applies both if they make the oath in front of Beit Din, or if they make it not in front of Beit Din. Like if the litigant goes to the witnesses and say, hey, can you come and testify? And they say, oh, we swear, we don't know anything about this case. They did it at home, not in front of Beit Din, but that still applies. If they're lying, they're still going to be liable. And all that is if they testify on their own. They say, we swear that we don't know anything about it. If it's if someone else adjures them, in other words, someone else says, if they say we don't know anything about it, someone else says swear to that, and they say yes, we swear to it, we don't know anything about it. So if someone else gives them the oath, then they are not liable unless it's in Beit Din. So in other words, if it's in Beit Din, then whether they say it themselves or the court issues the oath and makes them swear, they are liable. But outside of court, only if they do it on their own and not if someone else administers it. That's according to the Rebbi Meir. Hachamim omrim ben pi asmo ben pi acherim enan chayvin ad shivru behen bebeit din. Hachamim are more lenient on the witnesses, and they say whether he makes the swear himself or someone else administers the oath, one is not liable unless it's in Beit Din. So if outside of Beit Din he says, I swear that I don't know anything about it, and turns out to be a lie, they're not liable as a Shevuot ha'edut, because Shevuot ha'edut is only liable if it's done in Beit Din, even if he says it by himself. V'chayvin al zedon ha'shevuah v'al im zedon ha'edut, v'enan chayvin al shigata, u'mahen chayvin al zedon ha'shevuah, korban oleh v'yored. And here's something really interesting and important. Shevuot ha'edut, one is liable if one swears falsely b'mezid. This is unusual. Usually you bring a korban chatat for shogeg, but this is an exception to that rule. Here, one is liable if one made the vow b'mezid. That means he knew that he had testimony about this thing, and he made a vow anyway, knowing that it's prohibited to make a vow, and knowing the punishment for making such a false vow, that he would have to bring a korban. He knew all that and did it anyway on purpose. Still, he brings a korban. And al shigata im sedon hayadut, that means he remembered that he has testimony about this case, and he swore falsely, knowing that it's a false oath, but he didn't know that there's a punishment for it. That is called the shigaga about the punishment for the oath, even though he knew that he had testimony and he lied anyway. In both of those cases, he brings a korban. However, if it was totally shogeg, which means he forgot that he had testimony about this thing. Someone says, "Come testify about this thing," right? Weren't you there? And he forgot about it. He says, "No, I wasn't there. I don't know what you're talking about." And he makes a vow. Later on, he remembers, "Oh, I was there. I did see that." Okay, so at the time that he made the oath, he didn't remember. That's called shogeg, and he's not liable if he vows by mistake. And now, if it is b'mezid and he has to bring and he is liable, what is he liable for? A korban ole v'yored. Gemara asks, "Menahane mileh." What's your source that a Shevuot Edut applies to men only and not to women? Tetanu Rabbanan v'amedu shenei nashim ba'edim hakatuv medaber. We're going to learn it from this pasuk here in Sefer Devarim that says, the context is important. Two pasukim earlier, verse 15 says, "Lo yakum ed echad beish l'chol avon l'chol chatat b'chol chet asher yicheta al pi shnei edim al pi shlosha edim yakum davar." One witness is not sufficient for any matter, but rather you need 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses in order to bring a punishment for someone. And then 2 pasukim later says, "Va'amedu shenei anashim asher lehem hariv lifnei Adonai." Now, if someone appears against another party to testify maliciously and gives incriminating yet false testimony, so if there's false testimony, then the 2 people that have the litigation will stand before God. So here in the simple reading, "Va'amedu shenei anashim," that means the 2 litigants, the plaintiff and the defendant, who have the dispute, they will stand before God, lifnei kohanim v'ashoftim asher yu ba'im imahem, in front of the judges, and the judges back then were made up of kohanim also, and they will check into the matter and they will see. And if in fact the witnesses were false witnesses, then they get the punishment that they tried to give. So we see the context of the entire chapter is in fact about false witnesses. So yes, there is something about witnesses here, and they are explicitly talked about in Pasuk 15. However, a simple reading of Amedu Shenei Nashim is that this is talking about the litigants, and then because it says Asher Lehem Hariv. So this Midrash Halacha now is saying not like the Peshat, B'Amedu Shenei Anashim, men, and that's talking about the witnesses. Now the Midrash knows that this is not a simple reading, so it asks, Ata Omer Be'adim or Eno Ela Be'Ba'alei Din. How do you know that why do you claim that this pasuk is talking about witnesses? Maybe it's talking about the litigants. The two litigants come and stand. Keshu omer asher lehem hariv, hare ba'alei dinin amor. Hama ani mekayim v'amedu shenei hanashim, be'edim hakatuv medaber. No, it already says in the continuation of the pasuk, asher lehem hariv, the people who are involved in the litigation. That's talking about the 2 litigants. So since asher lehem hariv is already talking about the litigants, who is amedu shenei hanashim? Must be 2 other people. What 2 other people? Oh, it must be the witnesses. The witnesses, along with the litigants, will come to the court, and then the court will try to figure out if they are lying or not. So that's how we know that this is the anashim is referring to witnesses, and therefore they have to be men. Now the Baraita continues, V'im nafshecha lomar, if you want another answer, I'll give you another answer. Ne'emar kan sheneh, v'ne'emar alan sheneh, mar alan be'edim, afkan be'edim. In fact, it has to give another answer. Sounds like the Baraita itself knows that the first explanation is questionable. So the second explanation says, indeed, Amdu sheneh nashim, the sheneh nashim here are the litigants, in fact. Okay, according to the Peshat. And yet, we can still learn that the witnesses have to be men from a Gezer HaShavah. It says Sheneh over here, and over here it says Sheneh. The Sheneh over here is talking about Edim, and the Sheneh over here is talking about litigants. Now, since it says litigants, Anashim, actually the litigants could be any gender. A woman could have a lawsuit. So the Sheneh Anashim here is coming to teach me, through the Gezer HaShavah, that the witnesses have to be men and not women. Okay, so that's the end of the Braita. Now we ask, why is the Braita adding a second answer? Because if you say, I don't like the first explanation, because it doesn't say va asher lahem hariv, it doesn't have a vav. You see, if it read va asher lahem hariv, then you would say there's 2 sets of different people. The first one, shen hashim, that's the witnesses, and also the litigants, so then you say both. But since there's no vav, So it reads more smoothly as the two people who have the litigation. So that's the natural reading. So if you like that natural reading better and you don't like this first explanation, okay, I'll give you a second explanation. Because it says sheneh here and sheneh there, just like sheneh above is talking about witnesses, so too we can say that sheneh nashim is talking about witnesses and teaching us that the witnesses have to be men. That is all one version of the Baraita. We're going to see two more versions of the Baraita that are similar. Tanya idach v'amadu sheneh nashim be'edim hakatu medaber ata omer be'edim ono ela be'ba'alei dinin. The beginning starts the same. The pasuk says amadu sheneh nashim. This is talking about witnesses and teaches us that the witnesses have to be men. Well, do you say that this is witnesses? Maybe we should follow the Peshat reading, which is that Sheneh Nashim are the litigants. Amarta, v'chi shenaim ba'in ladin, shelosha en ba'in ladin. Wait, does it make any sense to say two? If it's talking about the litigants, are there only two litigants? What if there's three litigants? Like there could be any number of litigants. If someone steals from something that's owned, shared ownership, then there might be many litigants. If someone steals from many people, so there could be a lot of litigants or a lot of criminals, right? Why would you say maybe a whole group of criminals? So there could be many litigants. It could be 3, 4, 5, could be any number. Why would you say two? If you're saying two, doesn't that sound like it's talking about witnesses? So that's explanation number one. And if for whatever reason you don't like that answer, the Baraita continues, then I'll give you another answer, which is the Gezer HaShavah. Says here Sheneh and there Sheneh, just like over there it's talking about Edim above, so too this Sheneh Anashim is in fact talking about the witnesses. That's how you know the witnesses are men. So when what's wrong with the first answer that the Baraita says, and if you want, I'll give you another answer, because you could say maybe when it says Sheneh Nashim, it's talking about the plaintiff and the defendant. That there's two sides. That's the point. There's two sides to it. So there's going to be certainly at least one person on one side and one person on the other side. It's not excluding the fact that it could be more. Might be there's 10 people on one side. So it could be more, but the two is referring to the basic people. There's two litigants, one plaintiff, one defendant, even if in some cases there could be more. In every case there has to be two people. So you could say the Sheneh Hashim is referring to the litigants. It reads okay. So therefore, if you don't like the first explanation, then we'll give you the second explanation of the Gezer HaShavah. And now a third version of the Baraita. Tanya idach v'amidu Sheneh Hashim be'edim hakatu medaber ata omer be'edim ono ela be'ba'alei dinin amarta v'chi hanashim ba'in ladin nashim en ba'ot ladin. So same question. It says amidu Sheneh Hashim. This is referring to witnesses and teaching that witnesses have to be men. How do you know it's talking about witnesses? Isn't it a smoother reading that's talking about the litigants? Well, how could it be litigants? Do men come to judgment and women don't come to court? If a woman is stolen from, she's going to come to court. Or if a woman is a criminal, she'll be brought to court. If a woman doesn't pay back a loan, she'll be brought to court. So women come just as well as men. Therefore, when it says Sheneh Nashim, it cannot possibly be talking about litigants, since litigants could be men or women. So if it's not litigants, then must be that Sheneh Nashim is referring to witnesses, and witnesses are mentioned in this paragraph. So it's not the craziest thing to say that it's talking about witnesses. Or if you don't like that explanation, I'll give you another one. The Gezer HaShavah, Sheneh Sheneh, teaches that just like before, it's talking about Edim, Sheneh Edim, so to here, the Sheneh is referring to Edim and teaching that they are men. Now, why would you say a second explanation? What might be wrong with the first one? Because maybe you'll say, it's not the way of women to come to court. Usually women are more modest, they stay home. If they have a court case that they need something, they'll send a representative to the court. They'll send a man to the court. Generally, women didn't go to court. They didn't do that public things like that. So if you say, well, no, Sheneh Nashim is talking about a typical case. Usually, there's men in court. It's rare to find women in court. So it makes sense to say Sheneh Nashim is talking about the litigants, and therefore you don't like that first explanation. So in that case, I'll bring you the Gezer HaShavah. תנו רבנן, ועמדו שני אנשים מספר לבעלי דינין שיעמדו. And now Braita teaches another explanation of this pasuk when it says amidu, that the two people have to stand up. This teaches us that the two litigants have to stand up. In this case, the Midrash is following the Peshat, that Shnei Anashim is in fact talking about the litigants, and they have to be standing. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Shamati shimrasu lo shibet shenehem moshivin. That was Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda says, I have a tradition that if the judges say it's okay for the litigants to sit down, they can tell them to sit down. That's okay. Ezehu asur. So according to the Yehuda, what is prohibited? Shelo yeh echad omed ve'echad yoshev, echad medaber kol sorko ve'echad omer lo kaseh debarecha. What's prohibited is to have one litigant standing and the other one sitting, or one is allowed to speak as long as they want, and the other one, the judges say, okay, stop, you only have 2 minutes to speak. That is not fair. You have to treat them both equally. That's what we learned from V'amadu shena anashim. If one's standing, yes, then the other one has to stand. But if the judge is like, everybody sit down, that's okay. You can't give preferential treatment to one or the other. And in fact, we know that in ancient times, in Greek and Roman courts, they actually had clocks. There were water clocks. They would fill up a big jug of water and put a hole in the bottom so it would squirt out slowly. And then when that big pot is empty, that's it, the time is up. Or you might get another pot or three pots or 4 pots. And there were actually inspectors that would go and make sure that the pots were all the right size and the hole was in the right place. And so that each of the litigants would have equal time. So this was a big deal to make sure that the litigants are treated equally. And if one is sitting is generally for someone respectable. They sit down. So if one is sitting, it sounds like they are being treated better than the one that has to stand the whole time. So they just have to be equal. Tenor banan, besedek tishpot amitecha, shelo yeh echad yoshev echad omed, echad medaber kol sorko ve'echad omer lo kaser debarecha. A Braita teaches the same thing, but learns it from pasuk in Vayikra that says, with righteousness you shall judge your colleague. What does that mean? Or it could be with justice, besedek. That should be equal. You shouldn't have one of the litigants sitting and one of them standing, one of them speaking as much as they want, and one of them that you cut them short. Or another explanation of the same pasuk, here sedek in the sense of righteousness, that you should judge everyone in a favorable way. This is talking about not just judges, but actually everybody all day long. When you see someone and it looks like they're doing something questionable, judge them favorably. The chaf is literally a cup, as if when you have a balance scale and you have something in one side and one's on the other side, so tilt it towards favor. Now, you shouldn't do that if you're an actual judge in court, because there you shouldn't give preferential treatment to one person, because that's going to be something against the other litigant. But if you're judging a person and as outside of court and just wondering, hey, why are they doing this thing? So you should give them the benefit of the doubt. Tanei Rav Yosef, besedek tishpot amitecha, im sheitecha batorah misvot tishtadel leduno yafeh. Or another interpretation of the same pasuk, amitecha, we're taking as 2 words, im itecha. And Rav Yosef says this means that if there is someone who is with you in Torah mitzvot, in other words, someone who is a Talmid Chacham, someone who is Shomer Torah, Yireh Shamayim, then you should try your best to judge him favorably. Now, what does that mean? You should give preferential treatment just because someone is more religious than the other guy? Maybe it doesn't mean necessarily that he paid back his loan just because he's religious, so you're going to give preferential treatment. So what does that mean exactly? Let's see. Rav Ula bered Rav Ilai hava le dina kame de Rav Nachman. Shalach le Rav Yosef. Ula chaverenu amit b'Torah u'b'mitzvot. There's a story. One time, Rav Ula, the son of Rav Ilai, was a litigant, and he was going to be judged before Rav Nachman. Now, before the court case, Rav Yosef, who was a friend of Rav Ula, sent a message to Rav Nachman, the judge, and said, Ula, our colleague, he is with us in Torah. He's a friend in Torah Mitzvot. He's learned, he's observant. Now, why is he sending this letter? Amad lemay shalach li lechanufeh leh hadar amad lemishra betigre. So Rav Nachman's wondering, why are you sending me this letter? You want me to You want me to give him preferential treatment? You're trying to flatter me, to say, I should give him a better judgment just because he learns Torah Mitzvot? Okay, it's very nice he learns Torah mitzvot. It's a good thing, but that doesn't mean that he's necessarily right in this dispute. But maybe some kind of a partnership, business dispute, whatever it is. We have to judge according to the facts of the case. So why are you sending me this and telling me that he's a friend? What, I should just say he's right no matter what? And he answered, Rav Yosef then sent another message and said, no, I meant that he should be put up first. L'mishra b'tigreh, you should begin with his dispute. When you have the docket and you have 10 cases that day, let him be first in the morning. That way he doesn't have to spend all day in court, and then he won't have time to learn Torah. So rather, when you're making the order of cases, let him go first. That's all it means. But they're both going to go first, him and the other litigant. They both get the benefit of it. Not that you should favor him in the judgment, but just don't make him wait so long. Or another answer that maybe Rav Yosef said, that if you decide that this case is at the discretion of the judges. There's some cases where there's rules, right? There's a halacha, there's a mishnah, there's a tradition. This is the case. This is the law. Okay, then the judge has to give whatever the law is, good or bad. But there's some cases where there's no clear-cut decision about this case, and it's going to be left up to the discretion of the judges to say, it seems to me this guy's a little better. There's no proofs. So in that case, if it's up to the discretion of the judges, then hopefully you can assume that the person who knows Torah, who is Yireh Shamayim, is also going to be the person that is honest and careful with monetary things, with interpersonal things. So take this into account. If you're going to decide, not based on proofs, but just based on discretion, take this into account, and hopefully he will have a favorable judgment. Amar Ula, machloket ba'alei dinin, ava be'edim divrei hakol ba'amida. So Ula says, this machloket that we have over here between Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda. Tanna Kama says that the litigants have to stand no matter what. Rabbi Yehuda says that if the judge is okay with it, he can tell them to sit down. Now that machloket is only regarding the litigants, but the witnesses, everybody agrees that they have to be standing while they are testifying. Dichtib v'amidu shenei nashim. So now we're saying shenei nashim is referring to the witnesses. We're using it for both. Amar Rav Huna, machloket b'shat masa umatan, aval b'shat gemar din divrei hakol dayanin b'yeshiva b'alei hadinin b'amida dichtib vayeshev Moshe lishpot et ha'am vayamod ha'am. Rav Huna says another interpretation that the machloket between Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda is only when they are doing a deliberation. They're trying to see, they're having a discussion about the matter. And the judges are asking questions and answering them. However, at the time of the verdict, then everyone agrees that the judges must be sitting and the litigants have to be standing. They're about to call the judgment and say, we decided, we went, and they go in private and they discuss and they come up with a vote, and then they come and announce it. So then the litigants have to be standing for that part. As it says in Sefer Shemot, Moshe was sitting and he was judging the people, and the people were standing. So we learn from there that that for the main part of the judgment, during the deliberation, okay, everybody's talking, that if they want, according to Yehuda, if they want, they could sit. But during the verdict, everybody agrees this is the culmination of the judgment. They have to be standing. Lisha Nachrina, another version. Machloket b'shat masa umatan. Aval b'shat gemar din divrei hakol dayanim b'yeshiva b'alei dinim b'amida. Dehaedim ki gemar din damu uchti behu v'amidu shenei hanashim. So this is the same law, but from a different verse. That the argument is only regarding during the deliberation. Maybe they could sit down, but everyone agrees that during the verdict, the judges must be sitting and the litigants must be standing, because witnesses are like the verdict. In other words, the witnesses, their main job is when they're testifying. So when they're doing their fundamental job, they have to be standing. That's very important. And so to the verdict for the litigants, that's the main point of them being there, that they will hear the verdict. And so that's the culmination of the entire case. So they have to be standing at that point. And we quote our pasuk that the two men will stand. Debitu de Rav Huna hava la dina kamed Rav Nachman. Amar hechin avid. Iye kumikama mistatem a story about the wife of Rav Huna who was a litigant, and she was going to come to the court of Rav Nachman, who would be the judge. And Rav Nachman was wondering, what should I do? I have a dilemma. If I stand before her, the rule is that just as one stands before a sage, one stands before the wife of a sage. So Rav Nachman, he would stand before Rav Huna. Therefore, he needs to stand in front of the wife of Rav Huna. Here's the problem. If I stand before her and then I don't stand before the other guy, the other litigant, then the other guy is not going to want to talk. He will be suppressed. He's going to be like, oh, look, the judge is showing favoritism to the other person. The other litigant may not realize that he's only standing up for her because she is the wife of a great sage. But he might think that he's standing up for her because he's showing her favoritism. And so that then it won't look like a fair judgment. Now, if he does not stand up before her, we have a rule that the wife of a chaved, someone who's a part of the colleagues of sages, the wife of a chaved is like a chaved, and you have to stand up for her also. So he doesn't know what to do. So he had a trick. He told his attendant, go and get a duck and throw the duck at me right at the time when she's going to walk into the room, and then I'm going to stand up because there's a duck flying at me, and therefore I will, and everybody else will see, the litigant will assume that I'm standing up because of the duck. But really, that's just an excuse. I'm really standing up because she's walking in. And that way, I will fulfill both. I will stand up in honor of the wife of a sage, and also I will not look like I'm showing favoritism. Just happens to be someone threw a duck at me right at that point. Great story. V'amad mor, machloket b'shat masau matan, aval b'shat gemar din, dibra kol dayanin b'shiva ba'ale dinin ba'amida. Now we have a question. We just said that the machloket, standing or sitting, is only during the time of the deliberation. But at the time of the verdict, everyone agrees that the judges have to be sitting and the litigants have to be standing. So how could Rav Nachman then be standing during the time of the verdict? He stands up, fine. At the time of the deliberation, okay, he can do this trick. But at the time of the verdict, it says he has to be sitting down. So what's he going to do then? And the answer is the ativ keman deshareh mesaneh v'amar ish peloni ata zakai ish peloni ata chayav. You know what he'll do? Something in between. He'll sit like someone who is untying his shoe, who is kind of leaning, half sitting, stooping, and that way he'll be standing enough to show reverence and deference to the wife of Rav Huna, but he's not totally standing up. It'll also be half sitting, and that way that's sufficient while he says, you are innocent, you are guilty, and he'll give the verdict, and that way he can also fulfill both requirements. Amar Rav Huna, Haisu Bam Rabbanan, V'amar Estiit Lehu Dina Behadeh Motminan Lesurbam Rabbanan, Ulamaris Dame Amrinan Letib, V'ikae Letlan Ba. And so now a similar case, Rav Huna says, let's say you have a situation where you're a judge, and one of the litigants is a Torah scholar. The other litigant is a Amma Aretz. And so what are you going to do? The sage, it's not nice for the sage to have to stand. So out of respect, you have to tell the Torah scholar to sit down. So you're going to tell them to sit down. And then what you'll do is you'll tell the Amma Aretz he should also sit down, because it won't be fair if one is standing and one is sitting. We said everybody agrees that that's not allowed. And then the Amma Aretz, if he decides on his own to stand up, that's okay. As long as we told him to sit down, we tell the Talmid Chacham, oh, your respect, you sit down. We tell the Amma Aretz, you be the same, you can sit down too. If the Amma Aretz sees, oh, there's a Torah scholar here, there's a great sage here, and he doesn't feel like sitting down out of respect, he wants to stay standing, that's up to him, that's his prerogative, he can stay standing, but we gave him the option of sitting down. Rav bar Sherevya hava ledina kamed Rav Papa. One time, Rav, the son of Sherevya, had a judgment in front of Rav Papa, who was the judge. And so, since Rav Sherevya is a great sage, Rav Papa told Rav Sherevya, you sit down, you're a great sage. And the other guy was Amma Aretz, so Rav Papa said, you also sit down, because they should be equal. But then the attendant of the court came and kicked the other litigant, the Amma Aretz, and said, get up, there's a great sage here, what are you doing sitting down? And Rav Papa did not then say again to to sit down. How come Papa didn't tell him again to sit down? Now his claim will be suppressed because it looks like preferential treatment. Amar Papa Memar Amar Ihu haotban shilichahu dela mepayes minai. No, he won't think that is preferential treatment because I originally told him to sit down. When he first came in, I said, you sit also. It was the attendant that kicked him, not me. The attendant, he's he's doing his job. He thought that he should stand. So the attendant kicked him. So the litigant will have in mind, the judge is being fair. He told me to sit down. This other guy, the attendant, told me to stand up. Okay, I'll stand up. So that way, it'll have a proper respect and for the sage who's sitting. And the other guy, as long as the judge said sit down, someone else can say, you know what, you should really stand up. Another law about a similar case, if you have a rabbi and Am Aretz that both have a judgment, they're both litigants against each other. So the sage should not come early and sit before the judge, even if the judge is his teacher, right? They have a teacher-student relationship and they want to learn. But before the judgment starts, hey, let's meet for an hour and we'll learn for an hour. That's not proper. Even if they're not talking about the case, they're just talking about some other subject about in Torah. It's not proper because it looks like they are planning the case. The judge is saying, hey, listen, you say this, I'll say that. Here's the claim that you should make, which is not allowed. When the litigants come, both litigants have to be there when one makes his claim so that the other litigant can hear what the first litigant said, and then he can say a counter if he needs to. You can't have one litigant presenting before the judge without the other litigant present. And therefore, don't even look like you're doing that. Rather, the student, Tamid Chacham, should come and enter the court at the same time as the other litigant. But this is only true if they don't have a fixed time of study. If they have a fixed time of study, that this teacher and student every day, they have a Chevruta or they have a class at 10 a.m. And so now they're meeting also at 10 a.m. and they always learn at that time, then that's okay because everybody will say, we know they have a fixed study group at that time, and then the court case starts at 11. No one will think that they're planning their judgment before. They will certainly assume that they were just learning something else beforehand. ואמר רבא בר רב הונא, הייסו ברבנן דידע בסהדותא וזילה במילתא למזל לבית דיינה דזוטר מיניה לעשותיה קמא לה לזיל. Rabba bar Rav Huna said that if a Torah scholar knows some testimony about some matter, but it's demeaning for him to have to go to court and he's going to testify about some little thing, about someone who is not Am Aretz. So now he's going to have to take time and go to court and all that. It's a whole process. And he's a great Torah scholar. So if it's beneath his dignity to do so, he doesn't have to go. Amar Rav Shisha bered Rav Idi, afanana mitanena masasak o kupa, ve'endar kol yitol, areze lo yitol. Rav Shisha, the son of Rav Idi, says, I have a source for this because there is a Mishnah in Masechet Baba Metzia that says regarding finding a lost object. Let's say you have someone who's a very respected person, an elder. He finds a sack or a basket that's all big and messy, and it would not be within his regular manners to carry it around. He's not a porter. He's not going to go carry around some big basket of grain or whatever it is. And so since it's beneath his dignity, the Torah scholar that finds this item does not have to take it and return it to its owner. He could just leave it. He wouldn't carry it for himself, so therefore he does not have to go and carry it for someone else. Hopefully someone else will pass by and find it and return it to its owner. So just like over here regarding returning a lost object, if it's beneath one's dignity, you're exempt from that mitzvah. So too regarding testimony, if it's beneath his dignity, is exempt from that mitzvah of testifying. כנגד השם. כל מקום שיש בו חילול השם, אין חולקין כבוד לרב. However, that is only true when it comes to monetary matters. By not coming to testify, the guy may lose out on some money. Okay, so there we take into account his dignity. However, if it's regarding a prohibition, if it's some criminal action or anything that like that, or to testify that someone died so that the other person can get married, or that this person committed a murder. So anything like that has to do with a prohibition, there we apply the pasuk in Mishleh. There is neither wisdom nor understanding nor counsel against Hashem. Anytime there's going to be chilul Hashem, we do not give do not give honor to the teacher. We don't care about someone's honor. Okay, we know it's not very honorable for you great sage to come to court to testify, but this is a violation. This is chilul Hashem. There's a prohibition of someone violated that involves a chilul Hashem, which any violation, any isur would involve, and therefore it's not just a monetary matter between two people. Okay, they'll have to work it out somehow in another way without the this witness's involvement. But if it's an isur, then we don't give deference to the rabbi. The rabbi has to come to court. Rav Yamar havayada lesaduta lemor zutra ata lekamed amemar or tabinhu lechu lehu. Rav Yamar, he was a witness and he knew some testimony regarding mor zutra, so he came to court. Amemad, as the judge, told everybody to sit down, all the witnesses, since Rav Yamar was one of the witnesses, and it wouldn't be befitting for a great rabbi like Rav Yamar to have to stand up. So he told him to sit down, and he can't have one witness standing and one witness sitting, or one set of witnesses standing and one set of witnesses sitting. So he told them all to sit down. Amar le Rav Asher Amemad, v'amar ula machloket ba'bei ledinin, ava be'edim divra kol ba'amida. Rav Asher asked Rav Amar, how could you do that? Didn't Ula teach that the machloket above between Tanakama and the Biyudah about standing and sitting, that was only regarding the litigants. Maybe there you could tell the litigants to sit, but witnesses, everyone agrees that they have to be standing. So how could you tell Rav Yamad and all the witnesses to sit? Amar le hay aseh v'hay aseh v'aseh dechabod Torah adif. And Amar's answer was, listen, I have two conflicting misvat aseh. There's a misvat aseh, you're right, so that the witnesses should stand. There's also a misvat aseh that you have to give honor to great sages. So I have two that conflict with each other. Which one am I going to pick? Well, the misvat aseh, giving honor to Torah, that is more important. Therefore, for sure, Rav Yamad has to sit, and since he's sitting, I can't have him sitting and witness other witnesses that might be for the other side standing up. Then it was not fair. So that's why, since he's sitting, I told them all to sit, even though it overrides the one basic rule, but the other rule is more important. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.